Welcome to the Tough Decisions Daily Show with your hosts, Dan and Danae Hanford. As entrepreneurs and real estate investors, we are faced with tough decisions on a daily basis. These tough decisions can either make us or break us. On this show, you will hear from highly successful people sharing their stories behind tough decisions that they have had to make along their journey of success. In every episode, you will be able to learn from the thought processes behind the tough decisions that were made. Some of these decisions will have amazing outcomes and some not so much. So without further ado, your hosts, Dan and Danae.
On the podcast with us today is Chris Prefontaine. He's a best-selling author and real estate investor with over 26 years of experience in the field, including 18 years as a builder, realtor, broker owner, and investor. He's always been an entrepreneur, even when he didn't even know it. When he used to drag his wagon up to the street corner and sell junk from his closet, or when he used to purchase gum by the pack and sell by the slice in middle school. In 1991, Chris began building homes and built 100 homes before starting his own brokerage. He then became a broker owner and was selling 100 homes a year with his small team. Since the 2008 debacle, he realized he needed to reinvent his business so that he no longer had to use his own money or credit. After years of coaching independently, Chris founded Smart Real Estate Coach in 2014. The company coaches investors on how to scale and automate their business throughout the United States and Canada, all without using their own cash or credit. Chris and his team, which includes his kids, have done over $80 million in real estate transactions. They mentor, coach, consult, and have associates around the country doing exactly what they do. On top of that, they run their own buying and selling business, so they're in the trenches every single week. Between their existing associates around the country and their own deals, they're still doing 5 to 10 properties every month and control, as of now, between $20 and $25 million of real estate with little to no money down. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about, talk to us about how you got into real estate in the very beginning.
Oh, man. I'm dating myself, but around 91, I actually worked in a family company 100% unrelated to real estate. My dad sold that company, and prior to him selling it, I started doing some what I called spot building, just finding lots in existing neighborhoods and putting up homes that were pre-sold. And so that kind of was my foray into the business. And what sparked that, if I rack my brain a little bit, because someone else asked me that recently, is that he used to build his own buildings for the company, and the company would rent them off of him. And I'm talking big commercial buildings. He had like 5 or 6 of them spread out around New England. So I got the itch then. And then back in those days, I think it was when Trump's first book came out, you're going way back. And I just always had the itch. I think I originally wanted to go into as an architect, and then I started doing real estate in the building world. That was kind of as far back as I can remember, Dan.
Well, tell us a little bit about maybe, obviously, along this journey from getting into real estate and then starting, to do all these home builds and then getting to the point where you're starting to coach and to the point where you are now. Obviously, tough decisions were made along the way, more than you can count, more than you can probably remember or want to remember in some cases. But can you help us and walk us through 2 different tough decisions that you made? One that was maybe a decision that you made that was really tough and it didn't really go the way you really planned it to go. And then we'll kind of shift gears a little bit and dive into one that maybe went really well or maybe more than you expected then at that point. So let's first start off with a tough decision that you made that did not go so well.
Well, sure. The one that leaps out, I mean, what you said earlier is true. We could spend, a few days with the stories. If you're in real estate, that's just called life. You learn and you get better. But the whole run up to the 2008 crash, let's call it 2000, after I sold to Coldwell Banker, my brokerage, and I was more doing deals. Let's call it 2004 or 5 all the way to 8, 3 or 4 years where I thought, okay, great. I've got stellar credit. I'll use that and I'll do, construction loans and commercial loans and all kinds of things because I have the credit. Let's use it. Biggest mistake on the planet, because when things went down, banks don't really give a hoot who you are. They're going to come after you. And so when the debacle happened, I felt that lesson big time, and that decision big time. The decision to use my own money and to sign personally on things. Terrible decision, but it's what caused us, sparked us, forced us to re-engineer the business. So people say, well, what if you had to change it? I wouldn't change a thing, because what we have now is a direct result of that experience.
But what are some of those things that you decided to change going through that experience?
Well, the short answer is 10,000 foot view. It's what my business is today. So things like you alluded to in the opening, which was we do not sign on any loans, take out any loans, pledge our credit, or use our cash. And so with those properties we control, it's usually around 20, 25 million, not counting around the country with students. There's not one of those properties that has a loan on it that we're on, and he never will be. And that's a big difference when you lay your head down on the pillow at night and you are not on anything personally. It's a big, big difference. So forget financially, it's a stress reliever.
So back in 2008, you were putting your own money into deals as well as signing as a guarantor on the notes.
Oh yeah, when the market dropped incredibly, you can bet that the banks and the creditors were breathing down our back, and it was not even part-time, it was a full-time job to work out of all that.
Man. So in addition to, trying to mitigate the risk of, not putting your own money in and things like that, obviously, there's ways to mitigate the risk in addition to that. Like, for example, I've talked to some other people on the podcast that have said, one of the things that we do is we make sure that we have a quote unquote rainy day fund or a reserve account. So if there is some sort of a market correction that everybody's talking about coming up soon, that they can ride out through the storm, because those people who were able to ride out through the storm in 2008 are sitting really pretty right now. Yeah.
So a bunch of things come to mind there. Reserve fund, always a good idea when you're running a business, right? That's just business smarts. But some really cool things. So the way we buy, we only buy three ways, and there's exceptions to everything, but we only buy three ways: lease purchase, owner financing, and owner financing can mean a lot. But for us, it means the property's debt free and we're making payments directly to the owner. And then subject to existing financing. In all three of those, it's not like just important, it's imperative that the right contracts and the right forms are used and the right expectations are set up with both buyers and sellers so that you aren't putting yourself in harm's way. So for example, if I'm going to buy a home on owner financing, I'm only doing it one way. It's monthly principal only payments, period. There is no interest. So I'm getting massive principal pay down benefit throughout the term. Also hedging against any market drop, any recession. It's just, again, to put your head down the pillow at night to know that you're getting that kind of principal pay down is just awesome. And then on the lease purchase, there is a sign back provision. There's an extension provision. It's very, very well written. It's only from bopping and weaving and banging our head a few times and hitting a few speed bumps. And so those things are huge as we go forward.
In the introduction, I mentioned about, your kids being involved with your business now as well. How many kids do you have and what are their ages and what do they actually do within your company?
I better get these answers right on the ages. Okay,
depends on how many you have, right?
Well, I got that one good. I got two, but here's how we did.
Cool.
So we re-engineered things at the beginning of 13. Sometime at the end of 14, I remember specifically, my son was still licensed realtor at the time, and he started coming in and helping me with converting the rent-to-own buyers. I just got busy, and I needed some part-time help with that. So right now he's 29 and he still is our buyer specialist. And then my daughter Kayla and her son-in-law Zach came in with us right around the 1st of January of 16, I think it was. And Zach has replaced me in the buying and selling. He's 27, Kayla's 28. And Kayla is the general manager for all our buying and selling, as well as our coaching entity with Smart Real Estate Coach. So they're integrally involved, and that we all have different roles. And because of that, Dan, just as a side note, it's rather unique in the industry. I'm learning. We didn't do it for this reason. It just organically grew. But we're all able to jump in with, let's say you were a student. We're all able to jump in at some level with you, depending on what your question, what your challenge, what your deal is, because we all handle something differently. And so the support is just through the roof. We have one goal in mind. That's just to do deals, not to sell stuff, but to do deals.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about the opposite side of the tough decision that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. So just tell us about, or walk us through a tough decision that you made, maybe, recently or in the last, several years or whatever, that had a really good outcome that you really weren't expecting.
Well, I got to say that when I just alluded to 2013, prior to that, in between dealing with all the headaches from 08 and then doing this, I was doing some speaking in a different industry. And I got to say that I did not think the decision in August of 13 to start scaling the terms business. This business I'm in now, this was even prior to scaling coaching. I did not think by any stretch of the imagination that A, my family would be involved at this level, and B, would be doing the kind of volume we're doing. So that decision in 2013 was a major one on the positive side of things, as you said. And it has launched what essentially is our business today. And there's not many businesses in the US that make it and sustain $1 million and above. And we've got 2 of them that are doing that right now. So we're quite happy with the result. And that decision back in 2013, 5 years ago, almost to the day.
Chris, Danae here, and I'm just curious if you could talk to our listeners a little bit about how you have balanced your family and the business and keeping them separate, because that's one of the things that Dan and I've run into a little bit. And it's great to work with the people that you know the best, but it's also sometimes a tricky balance. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a big one today. Everyone asks, and it's an important one. Some people choose not to work with family. And so you get different opinions out there. I'll give you a couple things we do. A couple things internally. So we have a team meeting every week. We have an offsite every quarter. And so we're all making sure those are organized and not driving each other crazy. We also have it's a fun, but it's a strategic way of doing things, protocol. And that is we don't talk negative outside of the office. We all live and work. Our office is within the same area, around 2 or 3 blocks of each other. So it's not like we don't see each other. We hang with each other all the time.
That's pretty close.
Thought you just don't bring it home. So we have fun with it. So Nick lives literally next door to me, and Kayla and Zach used to live across the street. Now it's 2 streets over. And we'll leave the office and go home and maybe run across each other in the street or the yard and just say, hey, how was your day? Just kidding. So we keep it separate as much as we can and have fun with it.
So each of you actually work in a different office setting or environment, but you work really close to each other.
Actually, so here's how it is. We live within 2 or 3 streets of each other, and all 3 of those houses are within 2 or 3 blocks of the office. So if you were in an aerial and block of about 4 or 5 blocks wide, you have our office in each of our homes. And we do walk or drive to the office and work together every single day.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is neat. And it's also neat to hear how you kind of keep those things separate, because I think that's important. An important part of being able to work with those people that are close to us. Can you tell our listeners about a strategy that you use to make difficult decisions? As Dan mentioned a minute ago, it sounds like you've had plenty of them that you've made. So tell us a little bit about how you make a decision. Is there something specific that you do when you're facing a tough decision?
Very good one. I don't think I've been asked that. I think 2 things come to mind. One is team. I find that maybe because of the age difference, maybe not, our team works well together and bounces ideas off each other well. It's not just the kids. We now have a full-time bookkeeper and a phenomenal support person, Lauren. And so when there's decisions, I like to float them by them as well in one of our team meetings or off-site strategy meeting we have, because you do get different opinions. And in the past, it would just be, solo entrepreneur running with it. The second thing is huge for your listeners, and that one was too, but this one is just as huge, and that is mentors. There is no decision I made in 2013 without calling one of my mentors, and it's to this day. And so the mentors change and bop and weave as we grow through different growth spurts, but the family teams, business team, and the mentors are big as far as making decisions. Why wouldn't you? The success leaves clues. It's likely that your mentor should have went through everything you're experiencing, and just pick up the phone and ask him or her. You'll get the answer. I think it's huge.
Well, and we just did a Facebook Live before we got on the call today in the podcast. And, one of the topics was actually being the mentor for your children. We're not just their parents, but, as their parents, we are their mentors. And as a mentor, you shouldn't be telling somebody what decision to make. You should be giving them the options and different things that could happen depending on which decision that they make. And that way, as the mentor, you're teaching them to make the decisions themselves, because they also have to be ultimately responsible for that decision. But they're also being taught, that, you need to look at all the different pieces of the puzzle first before you just jump into a decision.
One of the lessons I learned, your point's big, because I just said to my wife, Kim, recently, my role here has definitely changed a bit and evolved. And part of it's my maturity and part of it's just the stage of our business. And that is developing people. one of the older books. It's been revised and I'm back in it now. It's called Multiplier. If you want to build teams and you're on that page, or you want to see your business scale, it's just a great book, because if you look at some of the great leaders, Larry Ellison comes to mind, Steve Jobs, they were great multipliers. They knew how to coach and handle people. And on your note, it's the same with your family. You want to do the exact same thing. You want to develop them. And so they run now, as of about a year ago, they run all the buying and selling entity in-house here. They do it. So I'll say, what do you guys think? And they'll powwow and they'll come back and ask, but they do it. And so as business owners, if we can be developers of people, or as the book calls multipliers, that is where you're going to get your scaling and your growth, all of the things being equal.
And going back to the point about family, you didn't just start, when you wanted to hire them to be in your business, you started cultivating them and building that trust and that mentorship with them the day they were born. And we're constantly being able to have them start making some of their own decisions, and also, being able to trust you, because when you have a mentor, you have to trust them, and you have to, have that confidence that when you pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, here's my situation, can you help guide me through this, that they'll be able to take you to that next level.
Well, yeah. And think about this. How can you grow up and my son-in-law didn't, but let's say our two kids, how can you grow up in real estate and experience that lifestyle? I mean, I don't know if this is conscious, but think about it and then try to go get a job. I mean, I'm not insulting any of the listeners, but I just can't imagine how or why anyone would want to do that when you're looking at the kind of business you can be in. But, someone growing up seeing that, well, man, it only makes sense that you'd want to gravitate towards that if it's one of your passions. I mean, you're talking, guys, just so you know, when I'm talking terms deals, the way we do them, we create 3 paydays per deal, and every deal is averaging right now, actual average, we track it tightly, is around $78,000 a deal. Well, man, you don't have to do 2 or 3 deals a year for some people to really, really make a major change in their lifestyle. So that's what I meant by when you're growing up young and you see that, why not learn how to get there?
Yeah. Well, can you kind of guide us a little bit on really what does the smart real estate coach do for somebody?
Sure. So I had an interesting discussion very recently with the podcast Shockpreneur, Kevin Harrington's podcast. And what he was amazed when I gave him this answer, because a lot of educators, you guys must speak with them as well. In my opinion, there's a big gap in the industry and we're filling it. And that is the point from where someone goes to a seminar or purchases something to the point of them actually doing a deal, and sometimes never doing a deal. And so we seek to fill that gap, and we do it by this simple system. We don't have 20 products to sell. It doesn't exist. We have one simple path, and if it works for someone, great, and if it doesn't, we understand. We have a free webinar that's content rich. It lets them say, do I want to dip my toe in or do I not want to? Because I'm about as blunt as they get on the webinar, and I tell them this is how it's going to be. And then if they do, they can go through a home video course, so they're not jumping on a plane. They're sitting at their own leisure and doing at their own leisure, the time-wise. And then if they like the home video course, they can get full email support, but they can take it to the next level if they want. If they're aggressive, they can actually apply to be one of our associates. And if the market is available and everything else checks out, then we may accept them as an associate. And that means we're doing deals with them. We're not just consulting. We're consulting. We're on the phone doing seller calls with them. If the market allows, we're doing some taped live calls and critiquing. I mean, we really get involved with what goal in mind? Doing deals. That's it. So when I have students come to me and say, with Smart Real Estate Coach, well, I've been at this, I've tried this product and that product and this method, but I haven't done any deals yet. This doesn't compute. It's just not even logical to me. So our goal is, with Smart Real Estate Coach, the short answer to your question is get people doing deals, turning a profit.
That's interesting, because that's something that Dan and I have discussed before too, about how, people can buy a program and sometimes spend thousands of dollars on a program, and the 2 different people can buy the program. One implements it and, makes money hand over fist, and the other person doesn't do anything with it. And a lot of times I know that has to do with the person, but it's also neat to see someone coming in and kind of filling in that in between and getting that person, just to where they can build a little momentum and be successful. And that's sometimes all they need to get going.
Yeah. And Danae, that's awesome, because here's the thing. 2 things came to mind right when you said that. One is, one of our core values, actually our purpose in our company on the wall, is empowering individuals and families. Now that happens to be in real estate, but it's empowering individuals and families because some people don't necessarily get it right away, or there's something that needs developing, whether mental, emotional, whatever. So it's the whole picture that's important. And the second thing is, and you guys will chuckle at this one, but it's a true story. So we were in Hawaii in probably 2003. This is a while ago. And we all went to take surfing lessons. And this is the best analogy I can give you with people in real estate actually implementing, getting it done. So they gave us the lesson on the beach. So the surfboard's on the sand. You can't really get in trouble. They go through the whole thing. And so that would be equivalent to being in a seminar room, right? It's comfortable. The deals all look great. There's no problems. There's no curveballs. But then they stuck us out in the water. Now, I remember Kayla and Nick at the time just zipping right by me. And I going in, you're talking about a 3-inch wave. These aren't big waves. They're trying to teach you. And I just went in, crashed, and went into the thing and got my knees all bloody. Well, I need more help out there. I need the execution. I needed someone to be out there with me doing the deal. They didn't. They were fine with just that first seminar, so to speak. And so it's the best analogy I can give you. This execution piece is so important to hold their hand and make sure they can get to the finish line.
And not very many coaches or mentors actually do that level. They're usually just, an advisor role, but not actually getting in the trenches with you.
Yeah. And so some people disappear from that. And I saw it when I was just consulting. They would go through the consulting, experience some frustration, and I hear it time after time after time when they call me and say, I've tried this. This will kill you guys. I have two that spent over 6 figures, over $100,000 on education before they did a deal and before they met me. And now they're both doing deals. But if they threw in the towel then because of that bad experience, what a mistake that would have been. One of them's close to $1 million now in earnings with us. Well, that would have been a huge mistake.
So yeah, you guys are definitely filling in a gap there, a much needed gap, as we can see from the stories there. Tell us a little bit about your success now. And one of the things that we like to ask is, what is one of the best things or the most fun things that you've been able to do with the money that you've made?
Well, see, everyone's going to give a different answer to that, but we're 52, my wife and I, and so for us now, it's creating experiences that money can't buy. So I know it's kind of a catch on words, but enough money to do the things money can't buy. So for us, that's travel, creating some cool travel experiences. We tend to travel either alone or with our kids. So again, more family, and that's what we do now. That's a key thing for us. It's all about family. We have our first grandson, and it's just hanging out with the family.
Where's the most exciting place that you've traveled, or what's the most exciting experience that you've had so far?
Our favorite's Grand Cayman. I don't know what's going to get in the way of that unless more of a European trip. And so behind that would be Italy for sure.
I was there 2 weekends ago.
Oh, really? Unfortunately, Dan, we were there during 9/11. So we were the second flight into Boston after 9/11, but it was a phenomenal experience and the people were great. Where did you go?
We actually went to the north part of the island, on the quieter side over there by Acaibo Yacht Club.
Oh, cool. I'm terrible with geography, but I just know it's a really cool place.
Yeah, it's very awesome. We've actually been there 3 times. We usually go every Memorial Day weekend. We just kind of have this thing in the last 3 years. We've been doing that. This year, my wife couldn't go with us because she's breastfeeding our 4th child, and so she wasn't able to come with us. But I took my 6-year-old son, and we had a blast. So what's the number one item that is on your bucket list right now that you want to do or go see or things like that?
On the Italy note, my wife Kim has been talking about Positano and that area for a while. So when we get done working on a house we're working on right now for ourselves, then that's probably going to be next on the agenda.
Is it as a house?
Well, the house is being done right now, so we'll go down over to Italy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Chris, we really do appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to be with us on the podcast today. How can the listeners reach you if they want to find out more information about the Smart Real Estate Coach, or try to just maybe reach out to you and ask you some further questions after they listen to the podcast?
Well, to keep it simple, they can just go to smartrealestatecoach.com, mention that they heard me on your show. In fact, I did this a couple of days ago. I'm happy they just mentioned your show. We will mail them one of our books. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's not an ebook. It's a full book, hardcover. No shipping, no nothing. Just tell us that they heard us on your show. We'll ship them one out. And then there's a free webinar right on smartrealestatecoach.com. And if you need to get me, just hit the contact button, or better yet, go ahead and email us, Chris, CHRIS, at smartrealestatecoach.com. And then you may have mentioned at the beginning, but our podcast is simply smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It was great being on.
Do you want to nominate a highly successful entrepreneur or real estate investor to be a guest on this show? Email us at dan@toughdecisions.net. Help us by spreading the word about our show with your friends, and also take time right now to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite platform. You've been listening to the Tough Decisions Show.